May it please the court, thank you for receiving my continued testimony. This statement I'm to present to the court involves the murder of William Coombs, and as with Harriett Nahanee and Bingo Dawson, I have personal knowledge and expertise on this matter after a long history of involvement with the deceased. William Coombs was an eyewitness to the murder and burial of children at the Kamloops and Mission Catholic Indian residential schools where he was incarcerated as a child. He was also an eyewitness to the abduction and permanent disappearance of 10 children from the Kamloops residential school at the hands of Elizabeth Windsor and Philip Mountbatten, aka Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip, on October 10, 1964. William Coombs joined our campaign protesting the residential school crimes during 2006, and he participated in the Vancouver church protests and occupations organized by Harriett Nahanee and myself. He was also a regular participant in my weekly radio program at Vancouver Co-op Radio, known as Hidden from History. William Coombs began to privately share with me and Harriett Nahanee his witnessing of the abductions of those children by Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip in October 1964. But out of fear for his safety, he did not speak publicly of it, especially after Nahanee's sudden death early in 2007. However, that soon changed, because during 2008, the ongoing church occupations led by me and the friends and relatives of the disappeared compelled the Canadian government's official quasi-acknowledgement of Indian residential school crimes in their so-called apology. This achievement was followed by the launching of the International Tribunal of Crimes of Church and State in Europe in June 2010, or the ITCCS. That tribunal eventually put on trial Pope Benedict, Queen Elizabeth, and others, and caused the resignation of Pope Benedict during February 2013. Well, all of these events and these victories and events prompted William Coombs for the first time to begin speaking publicly about the abductions by Queen Elizabeth in the Kamloops residential school. As a result, in a globally broadcast blog interview I did with him on January 16, 2011, William Coombs described in detail the Kamloops abductions and named Elizabeth Windsor and her accomplices. Now, in response, William Coombs received an invitation to speak at an ITCCS-sponsored forum in London, England on March 1st, 2011. An offer that he enthusiastically accepted, and I remember him coming to me very happy about that. We obtained an airplane ticket for him to go to London, and he was ready to depart from Vancouver on the plane to go to that tribunal, and he was to leave February 25th, 2011. But the day before his departure to London, on February 24th, 2011, which, by the way, was the 4th anniversary of the death of Harriett Nahanee, William Coombs was forcibly detained by 3 RCMP officers at the Native Health Centre on East Hastings Street in Vancouver. He was then transported against his will by these officers to St. Paul's Catholic Hospital in downtown Vancouver. Now, a note on St. Paul's Hospital. It's a notorious killing zone for the unemployed, for poor people, people scooped up off the street, and many Native people. Over the years, St. Paul's Hospital was a place to bring children killed in the North Shore residential schools, and then fake death certificates were issued from them. So it's a notorious killing ground, well known to anyone who works in the downtown east side. William Coombs was taken there against his will. And 2 days later, on February 26, 2011, he died. Now, the BC Coroner's report, which, as I mentioned, is included in all of the documents in our appendices in this statement, the BC Coroner's report, dated June 13th, 2011, which is case number 2011-0372-0013, it's signed by Chief Coroner Claire Thompson, and it claims that William Coombs died of, quote, disseminated tuberculosis and natural causes. However, the statement of William's nurse at St. Paul's Hospital, Chloe Kirker, says the opposite. According to Chloe Kirker's affidavit and that of William Coombs' partner May, both of whom attended to him until the day he died, William Coombs was healthy and displayed no symptoms of tuberculosis whatsoever, which was the official cause of his death. In the words of Chloe Kirker, the nurse, at his admission, William's blood pressure and heart rate were notably low. He had no fever. His chest sounded clear in all quadrants. I asked him if he had any pain. He said no. Besides the blood work counts, no other test results were in it. No patient transfer forms, no other pending tests, which was very odd. By my next shift with him, his blood pressure and heart rate were even lower, and again he had no fever. Not the symptoms of TB. His heart sounded strong. The fact was that William was asymptomatic of having tuberculosis. There were no contact precautions, which there would be if he had TB. No blood in his sputum, no coughing, no chest pain or difficulty breathing was reported, unquote. When asked for her professional opinion about what caused William Coombs' death after just 2 days at St. Paul's Hospital, Nurse Kirker writes in her affidavit, quote, "The fingernail lines I observed and his lethargy, overall weakness, soreness, and dizzy spells indicate a condition that was not tuberculosis. The fingernail lines are called Mees lines, and they appear in a person who has been poisoned with arsenic. It all points to him as having been exposed to arsenic over a period of time. The fact that the hospital refused to put him on an IV meant that any damage the arsenic was doing to his organs would be concentrated in his body. I call that deliberate murder," unquote. When asked if she disputed BC Coroner Claire Thompson's report concerning William Coombs' cause of death, Chloe Kirker stated, "That thing? Yes, absolutely. It doesn't correspond at all to his condition or his symptoms," unquote. Just before William Coombs died, Nurse Kirker was interrogated at St. Paul's Hospital by 3 persons whom she had never seen before, 2 men and a woman. None of these strangers wore hospital ID badges, and they refused to identify themselves. They demanded to know William Coombs' mental state and what he was talking about. When Nurse Kirker would not answer her questions, she was dismissed. Well, later that day, Kirker was removed as William Coombs' nurse. She was subsequently denied work, gang-stalked, and harassed over the phone, where she received death threats. And so quickly, she moved away from Vancouver, quote, "in fear for my life," unquote. Well, recently, even more evidence has surfaced that indicates the involvement of other actors, higher up, so to speak, including the involvement of the present British monarch, Charles Mountbatten-Windsor, so-called King of England, who apparently had a direct role in the ordering of William Coombs' death, according to insiders. On May 16th of this year, 2023, the West Coast Common Law Court of Justice received a sworn affidavit from a former Army officer who for years was part of the British monarchy's security team. This officer states that in late December of 2010, he participated in a special operations meeting in Buckinghamshire to plan the murder of William Coombs. The meeting was called by Major Johnny Thompson of the Royal Regiment of Scotland, who was and remains the security advisor to then Prince of Wales and now King of England, Charles Mountbatten-Windsor. According to the officer's affidavit, quote, "Major Thompson told us he was appearing on behalf of His Majesty the Prince of Wales. The Prince had just ordered the elimination of a foreign assassin threatening the royal family. I was surprised at the time that such an order was not being handled through MI6 and its overseas contractors. I was even more surprised when the target was a Canadian Red Indian, since normally the RCMP have jurisdiction over such operations. When one of my colleagues raised this with Major Thompson, he replied, quote, "The Mounties will handle this one on the ground. We're just setting the wheels in motion. This is a royal directive with the knowledge and consent of the Canadian Governor-General, Mr. Johnston," unquote. And the testimony continues of the eyewitness. It was later confirmed to me that in early February of 2011, Canada's RCMP Commissioner, Mr. Elliott, dispatched a squad of operatives to Vancouver to deal with the target. I also learned that the Indian they eliminated was a Mr. William Coombs, who as a homeless man seemed to me an unlikely terrorist. However, sometime later, when I read of Coombs' statement regarding his witnessing of the Queen's abduction of 10 Indian children in Kamloops in 1964, and of how he was to speak about that incident before a public tribunal in London in March 2011, I can understand, although not condone, the action of Prince Charles in taking Mr. Coombs off the board, unquote. And that full testimony is in the court's docket of evidence. According to this evidence, we therefore name, and I name personally, the following culpable participants in the death of William Coombs, and we name them as defendants in this case. Charles Mountbatten-Windsor, aka King of England; Mayor Johnny Thompson, Royal Regiment of Scotland; David Johnston, former Governor-General of Canada; William Elliott, former RCMP Commissioner, Peter Montague, RCMP Division in Vancouver, Jorge Bergoglio, a.k.a. Bishop of Rome, Michael Miller, Catholic Archbishop of Vancouver, Dr. Elliot Weiss at the St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver, Clark Thompson of the BC Coroner's Office, and John and Jane Does involved with the RCMP, the Anglican and Roman Catholic churches, and St. Paul's Catholic Hospital in Vancouver. All of the evidence supporting this statement is contained in my affidavit, and the full text has been provided to the court. Thank you.